This next game by Garry Kasparov is also one of my most favorites. Well, and as I mentioned before, it does not fit everybody else's criteria, and some people may not agree with me that this is one of the best games ever played, but I think it is. I don't know whether credit should be given to Garry Kasparov as a home preparation for certain variation of King's Indian, or he played it on board without using the home preparation. Either way, so this game is absolutely magnificent, and it's a very short game played against American Grandmaster Ljubomir Kavalek, formerly Czech Grandmaster. In Yugoslavia, this game was played. This is very, very exciting game. Let's go with it. C4, G6, Garry Kasparov is black. Knight C3, Bishop G7, D4, Knight F6, E4, D6, Knight F3, castled, and H3. Now, this is one of the variations of King's Indian. I don't know what they call it. There is no name, because when we talk about certain openings or even variations, I learned that when you go to different countries and they call it different names. So we just call it, not to confuse with anything, we just call it H3 variation. So after H3, E5 by black, D5, and in this position, after E5, D5, black played Knight A6. This is one of the main moves. There is a possibility of playing C6, Knight H5, Knight E8. We're not going to get into detail in a theoretical discussion. Let's look at the Knight A6, Bishop to E3, Knight H5. This all been played many times before. And in this position, white played Knight H2. Let me explain you what's the purpose of this move, Knight to H2. As you see, white played H3. What's the reason for move H3? They want to play G4 maybe, if black did not play Knight H5. So when black plays the Knight H5, G4 is not good because of Knight F4. Now, if white simply continues developing Bishop E2, then black is going to go Knight F4, either get white's bishop on E2 or get pawn on G2. So that's not good. So what white does, white is waiting when black goes Knight F4 and then go G3, kicking knight back. So but also white has to stop black from playing F5. Well, if black goes F5, then white wants to take the H5 knight with the queen. Then, for that reason, knight on F3 has to move. Well, but the question is, why knight goes to H2 and not to D2? I played this variation for white, and let me explain you why. Knight D2 is not a good move, because if whatever black does, black has to play Queen E8. That's the main move in this position, on Knight D2 and on Knight H2. On Knight D2, black goes Queen E8. Here is the idea behind this move. Black wants to play F5, and if white takes EF, black takes GF, and you see the H5 knight is protected by black queen. Then white wants to play Bishop E2. That's the main idea behind it. Knight F4, and now again white's light square bishop is hanging Well, it's not hanging like black can win it, but black wants to exchange the knight for light square bishop. And after bishop f3, you can see why this d2 knight has to stand on h2. Because if knight stood on d2, then black would have knight to d3 check. So that's why in this position, white played knight h2. Kasparov played queen e8 as expected. Bishop e2, knight f4, bishop f3, and now you can see black does not have knight d3 check. f5. This is the critical position of this variation. I have played this position for white several times, and remember I played this in US Championship in, I believe it was in 1983 against American Grandmaster James Tarjan, and I played castle here for white. And this is a good move that gives double-edged position, very interesting position. And it's okay to play for white like this. However, Kavalek played h4. This is very logical move. Well, here is the idea behind the h4 move. White tries to play g3, and obviously they want to stop black from taking knight takes h3. So that's why they go h4. Black goes queen e7, and white goes g3. And that's where this game becomes absolutely fascinating. And I am not sure whether it was home preparation or not. I don't know if we can ever know about it. But Kasparov in this position played knight b4. It's counterintuitive move and very, very hard to predict, and very hard to foresee the complications after this move. Knight b4 move was played, and white spent a lot of time here, obviously, and played the wrong move, queen to b3. Now let's see what should have been done. What white should have played. After queen to b3, black played knight d3 check, and we will see that. But now let's see what would have happened if white simply played g takes f. Then f takes e. Now this is a very strong move, and now white really has a dilemma what to do. They have several different moves in this position, and let's start looking for them. Let's look at them. Okay, the first move they have here is f takes e, then knight d3 check, very, very strong. And after king e2, black is having tremendous attack. After rook takes f3, knight takes f3, and the bishop to g4. Black has a very, very strong attack. Now in this position, after f takes e, white can play knight takes e4. But then what happens is e takes f, attacking bishop on e3. After e takes f, white has to move the bishop. Bishop cannot go to d4 because black plays bishop takes d4, queen takes d4, and knight c2 check. White cannot play bishop to c1 because after bishop f5, you see that knight on e4 is hanging and will be lost. For instance, if castle, bishop takes e4, and on rook e1, bishop takes f3 simply. So this is not good for white. And if white plays after f takes e, bishop to d2, then knight to d3 check, and after king into knight to c5, putting more pressure on a pinned knight on e4, and after queen c2, bishop f5, white is in serious trouble. So, but probably this was the best way to play for white, given that after knight d3 check, they have king f1. Black still has sufficient compensation for a piece. They can simply play knight takes b2, and after queen c2, knight takes c4. You see, attacking the rook on a1. Position is very complicated, and I think black is doing fine here. But this probably was a better way to play, better choice than Kavalek's queen b3 in this position. What happened after queen b3? It's knight f2 d3 check, and white has to move the king to e2, and now f4. Bishop d2, and here Kasparov had very interesting continuation. Knight takes f2, and after king takes f2, now knight d3 check. And white has two choices. That's how complicated this position is. Knight d3 check. On king e2, black can play fg or knight c5 first, and after queen c2, f takes g, with a very, very strong attack. And if king goes to g2, then e takes f, king takes g3, and the rook f4. Another magnificent move. That was all possible. Now, we are not going to get to all details because game may become here, position may become very complicated. If bishop takes f4, pawn takes f4, and on king g2, queen takes h4. Black has tremendous compensation for a rook. And if white does not accept the rook sacrifice in this position, and they go knight g4, bishop on d2, knight g4, then h5, knight e3, and bishop f6, also with a very strong attack. So this all did not happen, and after queen b3, let's get to the position we just analyzed. Knight is on h2, bishop on f3, and pawn on e2. After f4, bishop to d2, here is the position, and here comes f takes g. Well, that's another way to play. So after f takes g, that was Kasparov's move, f takes g, and rook takes to f3. White is forced to capture, and now bishop g4. Rook a to f1, and rook f8. And in this position, white makes completely losing move. Knight d1. White obviously wants to play knight e3. White is anxious to get rid of this pin. However, correct move was bishop e3. White has a threat. Black has a threat in this position. Black has a threat. Rook takes f3, rook takes f3, bishop takes f3, king takes f3, and queen f7 check, penetrating to f2 with a queen. After king g2, queen f2 check, and after king e2, queen f2 check, followed by queen f3 check and taking rook on h1. Well, this is a threat. So black has to defend themselves against this threat. So bishop e3 is one way to defend, covering the f2 square. But then I think the best move for black in this position is bishop to h6. That's a very, very sharp, a very interesting move. Now, if white plays bishop takes h6, now black has rook takes f3. It's extremely complicated combination. Tactics. Bishop takes f3, king takes f3, and queen f6 check. King g2 is a must. King e2 is obviously very bad because queen f2 check followed by queen f3 check will be deadly. Okay, king g2 is a must. Queen f2 check. King h3, queen f3. And after rook h2, there is g5 move. Actually, in this position, interestingly enough, it's a draw. Because bishop takes g5, queen f1 check, king g2 h5 check, king takes h5, queen f3 check. And if white goes g4, then queen f7 check followed by queen h7 checkmate, queen f3 check, and after king h6 we go queen f8 check, and this is a draw. White must go king h5 since king g6 will be a checkmate after queen h7, and this magnificent battle could have ended in a draw. But this is one of the subvariations. I'm telling you, the position was extremely complicated and very energetic, and very creative play by black made it possible. So after knight d1 and black's move queen f7, everything is over. Now knight on f3 is simply hanging, and white cannot defend this knight, and white cannot play bishop takes b4 due to very unusual fork, knight to c1. So what else happened in this game? White played bishop e3, bishop takes f3, king d2, queen d7. Now queen d7 attacks the rook on h1 because queen just got out of the pin. Rook h2 g1, queen h3, a3. Now black plays bishop takes e4. It's another very strong tactical shot because now rook on f1 is hanging, white rook. White plays rook takes f8, bishop takes f8, and after ab we have queen h2 check, and king must go to c3, and now after knight to c1 white resigns. You see, the queen is hanging. If a queen moves anywhere, the knight e2 is going to be fork, and if black plays bishop takes c1, then queen is going to take on h2, and white's position is totally helpless. In my opinion, it's extremely powerful victory, and with the way it's a matter of taste, as I told you, when you pick the best game, I think it's the best, one of the best games. It can easily be counted as one of the best games ever played in chess.